as many of you know, and what we call the CCB or the conscious.
Very.
Okay. So a lot of that I have learned through Leonard. Whatever hypocrisy I was carrying around money, has gone away. Somewhere that many of us have this, that spirituality and money don't go hand in hand. Yes or no? How easy it is to use the word. Suppose I tell you, okay, chalo, let us do this small experiment. Okay, I want you to repeat 3 sentences with me. Okay, ready?
Yes.
Okay, the first one is, I love prosperity. Okay?
I love prosperity.
Second one is, I love Lakshmi.
I love Lakshmi.
The third one is, I love money.
I love money.
What did you observe in the third one?
More pressure, more
Huh?
power, more power.
Yes,
More than power.
Hesitation.
At least all those who are on the spiritual path, what did you? How many of you have the guts? I tried this once, okay? Because I am so-called, all of us, Ajay, we are all so-called SSY gurus, okay? I tried to put it on my WhatsApp status. I love money. 2 days I put it, 3 days I put it, and then I started getting, what if others are going to read this status? Do you agree to some extent or not? The third statement, I love prosperity, is so simple to say. I love Lakshmi is very easy for us to say. The moment it is I love money, you to money minded. We don't understand the whole power of Lakshmi. Okay. So that whole, and there's a lot of hypocrisy involved in our interactions, particularly spiritual people. We don't understand the power or the Shakti that money is. So that was another area where I got a lot of breakthroughs. Now it is far easy for me to receive money. Okay. For many of us, it is easy to give money. It's ulta, okay? Those who are on the spiritual path, you will agree. It's easy to give money.
Yes.
Yes. Little difficult to receive money.
Yes.
Yes. And the most difficult is what?
Keep money.
Not keep money. Keeping money is easy. The wife will take care. Don't bother. Asking for money. Yet more difficult, no? Asking for money. Even if we are doing a valid business over there, also कई बार अपने को और लगता है, So there are so many distorted belief systems around money that we have somehow not come to terms with the holiness and the sanctity of money itself. So this entire process has become very easy for me to give money was always there. Okay, I was almost lopsided to that in that area. Now receiving money is far easier, and asking for money or demanding money or putting my point of view, okay, has become a lot more easier. So this has been one of the other breakthroughs besides the concept of physical immortality, which is giving me so much. And the second is this. Besides this, there have been some other breakthroughs. But I would rather not go into that because you have not come here to hear me. You will be doing that all the while and hopefully enjoying. So one last point that I would, or rather a couple of points that I would like to share. How many of you have read the autobiography of a yogi? Okay. So you have all heard of Mahavatar Babaji? Yes? So Mahavatar Babaji was a name given to Babaji by Paramhans Yoganandji, because he is not just an avatar, but he is much more than an avatar. Okay, most probably much more than what we call the Ashtasiddhis also. So, but otherwise we call him Babaji. Leonard has been a direct disciple of Babaji, which by itself is a matter of great privilege or spiritual privilege, if you may call it. We have one more guest over here who is also a very fond follower and blessed by Babaji. Besides, so the whole point is that this entire conscious connected breath itself, or what we call CCB or the Nirjaya Kriya we do, was intuited by Leonard in the 1960s, and he says that he was already being blessed by Babaji then, so it is Babaji's Kriya Yoga for the Western world, and that is what Babaji in his Hera Khan Baba body from 1970 to 1984, which is when Leonard was with him during that period as well, told him. So his rebirthing or breathwork movement has gone to, he says 10 million, but I feel it has gone to many more people beyond that, because just like how with Guruji Rishi Prabhakar, the Siddha Samadhi Yoga movement is not just about SSY, but a lot of people who learned from Guruji have had the vision to spread it, and under their own auspices, unki sanstha ke through, they are teaching something similar. So I think the rebirthing breathwork movement has gone to more than very easily more than a crore people. That is a rough background of Leonard. As a human being, I found him to be one of the most silent people. I don't know how many sentences he utters, Rajendraji, during a day. If you could keep a count sometime, it would be sometimes in single digits. And extremely simple, absolutely easy to be with. His presence, I have felt, is absolutely feather-like, if I can use that word, just like being with a feather. So I would rather want all of you all to listen to him and experience for yourself what I feel about him. So can I invite you, please?
Thank you. So I have a whole list of topics to talk about tonight. And I was instructed to talk about money first. The key words are spiritual enlightenment, spiritual purification, and spiritual community. And I'm always happy to see spiritual communities like we have here tonight. I was reading volume 3 of the Shiva Purana in the car on the way to the meeting, a special chapter about knowledge, and it says that Shiva is everything and everything is Shiva. And so if we really know what that means, we're spiritually enlightened. So I'd like to elaborate on it a little bit. I became spiritually enlightened in 1960. And spiritual enlightenment, or Shiva, is energy. Energy, thought, and form. And it's easier to think sometimes in terms of energy than it is to think of the word Shiva. And so energy becomes what it thinks about. There is energy, thought, and form. And energy becomes what it thinks about. So Shiva is energy, Shiva is the thinker, and the energy becomes what it thinks about. And so everything is Shiva, and Shiva is everything. So if we start with that, and we have a good foundation, I became a successful business consultant before I discovered rebirthing and perfected rebirthing. And I developed a system that enabled all of my clients to double their income 100% of the time. And so I'll share some pieces of that, but it also involves personal work, which we're not able to do, but maybe I can answer some of your questions. Money is ones and zeros on paper or in computer chips. So I don't know how you feel about loving ones and zeros, but money is an interesting thing because, and we have to love it or have an affinity with it in order to even understand than it is ones and zeros on paper or in computers. So, one stands for Shiva, right? Infinite eternal energy. Zero stands for nothing. So how come when you add 0 to 1, it's worth 10 times as much? Or if you add more nothing and have 2 zeros, it's 100 times as much. So adding nothing to 1 is a very mystical process. And so there's energy, thought, and form. And we can sit and meditate on the silence, come up with an idea, and turn it into form. And all the money that you don't have, other people have. So we have to come up with an idea, communicate that idea to other people in a way that they are willing to pay us for it. And so the idea can be turned into a specific physical form, or it can be turned into a service. Money is a means of exchanging ideas, goods, and services. So we can sell ideas, we can sell services, or we can sell physical things that are created. And so we have to learn how to turn our desire of serving other people into alignment with our own passions. We can enjoy earning money if we're doing something that we love to do. And so we have to discover what it is that we really love to do, and then package it in a way that other people will enjoy paying us for it. That's the way that we win the money game, is to discover our passion. And so when I decided to work with groups of people instead of primarily on an individual basis in consultations, I had to package the information in a way that I could communicate it to a group. And so helping people discover what their passion is, what their loves are, what their favorite pleasures are, and then turn them into a business is one of the fundamental purposes of the money seminar which I developed. And so you can start thinking about that. When you turn what you love into a business, then you enjoy working whether you get paid or not. And the more you enjoy working, the more other people enjoy giving you money. You experience that when you go to a restaurant. And if you have a waitress or a waiter who really enjoys serving you, then you enjoy giving them bigger tips. Even if they get a tip at all. We think about giving them a tip when we get really loving, enthusiastic, and cheerful service. And so discovering our loves is important, and then learning to turn them into a business. And so that's a good idea for a one-day workshop with a group of people this large. It would take at least a day, maybe 2 days, to actually do that process and have each person discover what their favorite pleasures are in life, and then to do enough creative thinking to turn it into a business idea that can be marketed. And once you do that and you start marketing your ideas, then, or your services or your goods, then it's just a question of You can double your income in two ways. You can double your income by raising the price, or you can double your income by serving twice as many people. And so you have to think about both of those alternatives. Anybody have any questions about money before we move on to another subject? Yes?
Often you are doing something, you already are into something. Is it possible for you to be able to convert yourself to like that?
I have to really concentrate to hear what you're saying through the exit.
You are already into some form of work.
Yes.
You said we need to discover something that you are happy with and
Right.
convert it into work.
Right.
Is it possible that if you're working on something, to be able to make yourself to start enjoying it?
Yes. Yes, actually, I'm glad you brought that point up, because that's very important, that we can transform our attitudes towards what we are doing now in order to give ourselves more pleasure. And we all have to do that. Even I have to do that in the spiritual enlightenment business. I mean, what could be more pleasurable than enlightening people spiritually and more satisfying? And yet, spiritual enlightenment is not that difficult. There's just energy, thought, and form. And so, and I've been enlightening people for over 50 years. And so, when you stop to think about it, all there is in any business is communicating with people. Whether you're communicating about a product, a service, or an idea, all there is communicating with people. And so we, no matter what the product is, even if it's spiritual enlightenment, we have to crash through our own barriers in order to find the pleasure. And the pleasure of life comes from tuning into the source. And so, no matter what business we are in, we have to continue tuning into the source. And when we are communicating, we are turning into the source of the other person. And to the extent that we can contact that source in ourselves and other people, we automatically experience pleasure.
Thank you.
Very good. Another question. And so, in addition to, we don't have to limit ourselves necessarily to one idea, service, or product. We can have multiple streams of income. And even when we do have a pleasurable profession and we're enjoying our work, we can also expand ourselves and create other streams of income. And so it's a question of tapping into our creativity, looking, in other words, looking at our other pleasures. We're all not limited to one pleasure in life. We can have many pleasures in life, and we can turn each one of them into a business. Okay, so what's the next subject?
Any questions?
Yeah. Is it that people don't value free things, therefore we have to charge to teach them good things?
Well, to really answer that question, you have to go back to the invention of money. And so, the money was really invented out of the exchanging process, because people produced clothes or shoes or vegetables, different kinds of food, and they went to the market and they exchanged it. And so as long as there is an exchanging process, the exchanging process can become very complicated. And so one individual came up with the idea of money, and the idea of money, see, if I wanted to exchange my shoes for pants which he was producing, then he might not need shoes. So then I have to find somebody who wants shoes exchange the shoes, I have to find out what he wants. And then I have to go find out who's producing what he wants. Exchange my shoes if that person likes it. And if that person doesn't like shoes, then I have to find out what he wants. And then I have to find whoever's producing that. And I have to keep going through that process until I find somebody who wants my shoes. And then I go back through the whole process to the original guy who has the pants. And so to invent money to facilitate the exchanging process, and money basically is anything that people agree to use. And so here's a very interesting fact. Everybody has the right to print money. And you can print any kind of money that you like, and then you have to convince other people to use it as a means of exchange. And so once you print money and you get people to use it, then it works. And so people all over the world have started creating what's called local money systems in order to compete with the Federal Reserve Bank system, the national bank system. And so bankers, about 800 years ago, printed money as debt and loaned it into circulation. And you have that system going on in India. Well, once the bankers got their money to be popular, a lot of people started using it, then they took advantage of the ignorance of people about their own right to print money and controlled the money game by loaning their money to other people and charging interest on it. The fact is that the Reserve Bank of India is actually owned by the Bank of England. And when the English were kicked out politically and militarily, the bank took over the country. And India and every other country that has a national bank is run by the national bankers because they control people with money. And the habit of controlling people with money is what creates the corruption, the graft and corruption and bribery that goes on in the Indian political system as well as every other system that you have. And so it originated about 800 years ago when bankers' money became popular, and they took advantage of people's ignorance of their own ability to print money, and just took advantage of people. And so they took over one country after another until they dominated Europe. And actually the United States was created to get free of that system. And in the beginning, in the 1700s, middle 1700s, Americans printed their own money. And they distributed it into circulation in order to enable ideas, goods, and services to pass easily from the producers to the consumers. Well, the Bank of England didn't like that, and they financed the Revolutionary War in order to destroy the American money system. George Washington, since he knew how money was created, he printed all of the money that he used to finance the war. And after the government was established, he printed all of the money for government expenses. So governments have the right to print money for their own expenses. There doesn't have to be taxes. Taxes is a corruption, a total corruption, which is implemented by the bankers in order to maintain their debt-based money system. So the United States government has printed money for its expenses until after 1913. The bankers established a national bank in the United States in 1794, and Thomas Jefferson and other founding fathers got rid of it in 1814. Bankers used their money and influence to establish the second national bank in 1816, but their money didn't become popular like it is today in India. And Andrew Jackson got rid of it in 1836. Since between 1836 and 1913, the United States government printed the money. And the bankers got the Federal Reserve Act passed in 1913, but it took them over 20 years to get control of the money system, and government printed money was still popular in the 1930s. I have some pieces of it. And so then in Eisenhower printed money after the war when he became president, and J.F. Kennedy printed United States notes to compete with Federal Reserve notes, and that's why he was assassinated. Actually, Andrew Jackson, going back to 1836, the bankers tried to assassinate him 3 times, but he was an intelligent general, and he protected himself. Kennedy was just a lawyer, and Abraham Lincoln was a lawyer, and Abraham Lincoln, who firmly established the right of the people to print money after the Civil War, was assassinated for the same reason that Kennedy was assassinated. So this game, this power game, has been going on between people who intelligently understand money and the bankers. The bankers, the national banks took over Japan after World War II, and they took over several other countries as a result of World War II, including Russia, although they didn't get control of Russia until after the wall came down. And China and Muslim countries are the only examples left in the world of countries and governments that print their own money. All the other countries in the world are owned and operated by a national bank through what is sometimes called a secret government. They don't have to work hard to keep it secret because people are just too ignorant and apathetic to care. We just go along with the system, whatever becomes popular. So the idea of communities printing their own money and putting it into circulation in an intelligent, orderly way is an idea that's becoming more and more popular in the world. I did a training in France in August and noticed that there was over 50 local money systems that have been established in France. And so the idea of local money and people taking charge of their own money system is a very important idea, and it's something that you should think about, because as long as the bankers are printing money, all the money goes back to the bankers. And we have that disease in this country. And all of the national banks in the world are owned by the same people. And they try to keep their identity out of people's awareness. That has been their goal for 800 years, is to keep their identity out of people's awareness, because when people realize how the money game works, they become very upset. And they start working to put the bankers' money business out of business. And so who financed George Bush's war in Iraq? Federal Reserve Bank of the United States. Federal Reserve Bank financed George's war, and they did it for 2 reasons. One is the government, in order to finance the war, it costs them billions of dollars every day. And those billions of dollars get added to the national debt. And when the national debt increases, the bankers get more interest on the money. They also finance the war against Iraq because Iraq does not have a national bank. They didn't have a national bank. They do now. And the conflict, many of the conflicts that are going on in Iraq today are related to the problem of the national bankers taking over the country. And Iraq has a 100-acre embassy. It's the largest United States embassy in the world, in order to maintain their power position and to continue to infiltrate the society with the banking system, the national banking system. So that's the game. And you can't understand the news if you don't understand how money actually works. So China, what actually happened in Russia is that the bankers tried to take over Russia for centuries. And when the communist revolution, the socialist revolution happened there, the bankers made a deal with Lenin to give him armaments, because the bankers own most of the military industries. And they gave him arms in exchange for not socializing the banking system. Mao in China did socialize the banking system. And so the government prints all of the money in China, and that's why China is the most prosperous country in the world today. They have more money than the United States government. They have more euros than any country in Europe. They have more of every currency in the world than any country. And the bankers prevented the United States government and the United States people from doing business with China until Nixon. It was Nixon who realized that there's going to be another world war if they didn't acknowledge China and acknowledge China's money. So it wasn't possible to do foreign exchange with any of the banker-owned countries until China's money was acknowledged. And that didn't happen until the 1970s. So these are just basic information about money that's important to understand. Another really beautiful thing.
He owns a mint.
Okay.
Yes, he can.
You own a mint?
He was applying from the Slovakian state mint. Czechoslovakia divided into two.
Czechoslovakia?
Czech and Slovakia. Czechoslovakia, they divided into two. One was Czech Republic and the other was Slovakian Republic.
Okay.
So the Slovakian state mint, they wanted to supply to the Indian government the 1 rupee, 2 rupee and 5 rupee coins.
The one who does what?
1, 2 and 5 coins.
Okay.
You know, like you have those,
Right.
yeah, the actual coins. So we represented the Slovakian state mint to supply to India.
Oh, they did what? What did they do?
We represented the Slovakian state mint, the government mint, to make these coins, manufacture the coins in Slovakia and supply it to India. Because if you make it in India, the price for 1 rupee was 1 rupee 20 paise. And if you make it in Slovakia, the price was say 60 paise.
Okay.
So we got it made in Slovakia and we should supply it to India.
Very interesting.
Okay, any other questions before we move on?
Well, I just want to make one more point. There's a movement that is happening that is very interesting, and it's called the dividend movement, public dividends. How many of you know that during the first year of the recession, the president of Australia put $900 in everybody's bank account? How many of you know that? Okay, just a few of you. And so that kept Australia out of the recession for several years. How many of you know that the oil profits in the state of Alaska went to the government, and the government divided it up, and all of the citizens that live in Alaska received $6,000 per year. So the idea of distributing money to every person equally in a political subdivision is a fantastic idea. And
this was before Alaska became part of the US from Russia, because Russia sold Alaska to the US.
His question is, Russia sold Alaska
to the US.
yeah.
So this was before that or
No, it's just a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know if they're still doing it, I haven't checked, but for several years, all of the citizens of the state of Alaska received a dividend of $6,000 a year. And so the idea because in order for money to work as a means of exchange, everybody has to have a regular supply of money. A regular supply of money. And so if a private dividend fund was established and all corporations that had excess profits just made a contribution to this dividend fund, and this dividend fund was distributed to all the people in the particular area, then they would have money to spend with each other. When people have money to spend with each other, then everything in the economy accelerates. When people don't have money to spend, then business doesn't work. So to have an intelligent, rational, fair money system, every participant in the system deserves an equal, regular supply of money in order to use it as a means of exchange. And so, unfortunately, that hasn't happened in India. India, the Bank of England took over the country more completely than they took over the United States. And except after the 1930s, when they finally used the power that they manipulated for themselves, when they got the Federal Reserve Act passed, which is actually done in 1913 during Christmas recess, when they knew that their enemies were home with their families, and they packed the United States Congress with their friends, and they passed the Federal Reserve Act. That's how it was originally passed. And so when the people who knew the game came back and found out that it had been passed, they tried to get it unpassed, but they didn't get enough power to do that. And people didn't realize the consequences until many years later of having a national bank that eventually takes over the country. The Federal Reserve Bank of the United States runs the United States government and controls it through the Senate. Just like in England, they control it through the House of Lords. So whenever the Federal Reserve Bank can establish a government with two houses of legislature, then they control the small one, and that way they can totally control any legislation that goes through the body. And so that will give you something to think about and something to study. But let's talk a little bit more about this dividend idea. So if you start a local money system, then you have to distribute money to all the participants in the system, and then you spend it with each other. And so the truth is that local government or state government or national governments have the power to print money and to distribute a certain amount of money to every participant in the system, to every citizen in the country. But the dividend idea is the idea of conceiving of the city of Mumbai as a corporation. This probably is a corporation, right?
Yes.
Do any of you invest in the stock market?
Yeah.
Okay, the best stocks to buy are stocks that pay dividends, because the stock goes up and down in price, the value of the stock goes up and down. You're crazy to sell it when it's going down, but people do. They panic and they sell it when it's going down, and they lose money. But if you have a dividend-paying stock, then while the stock is going up and down, and you're waiting it to go high enough to sell it in order to make a profit, then it's still paying dividends. You're getting paid to wait until the price goes up. And so the idea, and so the corporation takes a percentage of its profits, and they pay all of the shareholders a quarterly dividend, a monthly dividend, or an annual dividend. And so there's 4 laws of wealth. The first is the earning law. The second is the spending law. The third is the saving law. And the fourth is the investing law. So in order to honor the laws of wealth or money, and it applies to wealth as well as money, real wealth as well as money, the 4 laws of wealth too, and I can explain that. But the idea of investing is to take your money, to invest it in something that pays a profit on the money, so that you're getting income off of your money. And in order to do that, you have to have a surplus of money, right? And so you have to go back through, ultimately, to the earning law in order to get a surplus of money, which you can then invest, and eventually you have enough income from your investment so that you don't have to work anymore. How many would like to be in that position? Well, if everybody was in that position and everybody stopped working, there would be no ideas, goods, or services to buy. And so, Ram and Sita solved that problem. About 300 years ago, a yogya was excavated, and they found in the middle of the town square of a yogya a huge mountain of gold coins. Ram produced a period of peace and prosperity that lasted over 10,000 years. Actually, it lasted about 50,000 years. Ram lived for 10,000 years, for 11,000 years, and Sita lived for 10,000 years. And it was common for people to live 5,000 to 10,000 years during the days of Ram and Sita. And Ram's father, if you remember, lived over 60,000 years. How many of you knew that detail?
Dashrath lived for 65,000 years.
So the Ramayana also says that children did not die for 10,000 years. Everybody knew that death was optional. And so the real purpose of the words physical immortality is just to expand your thinking and to think about life and death more intelligently. But since everybody knew that death was optional, there was no reason for children to die. Children only die in societies when the parents and most of the people in the society believe that they don't control death. Everybody controls their own death. You control your own death. And we can talk some more about that later, but we're still talking about money. So Ram and Sita had a huge pile of money in the town square, and everybody knew that if they needed money, they could just go and take as much as they wanted. That's a revolutionary concept. But that concept is implemented if people realize that they have the power and the legal right to print money. When I first became aware of this, I researched the laws of every practically every country in the world, and it is legal in every country that I can think of for anybody to print money. How many of you ever heard of American Express traveler's checks? Yeah. Well, the guy who created American Express traveler's checks realized that he had the legal right to print money. So he printed traveler's checks and he sold them into circulation, charging a 2% commission on the money. He sold money into circulation and made billions of dollars. And when I first started coming to India in the 70s, American Express traveler's checks was the most valuable money in the world. A private money printing company produced the most valuable, popular, and successful money system in the world because he realized that he had the legal right to print money. And so that right exists, but people don't have the intelligence and imagination to use that right. It was actually in 1980, I got the idea of printing money which had mantras on it. I had the idea of, I used to work in Europe, and I would have French francs in this pocket, German marks in this pocket, Dutch guilders in this pocket, English pounds in this pocket. And I became very aware of money. And so I thought, well, why not have money that is the most beautiful money in the world and that actually teaches people what money is, that it's the most educational money in the world. And so I took that idea and I printed money which had mantras on it, and it had Babaji's picture on it, and it had the Divine Mother's picture on it. And I sold them into circulation for 10% commission. I wanted to make that money faster than American Express, and so instead of selling them for 2%, I sold them for 10%. And I found that it was so easy to sell this money into circulation to make a profit. I had to decide whether I was going to give up rebirthing and go into the money business or give up the money business and stay in rebirthing. And you know what I did. But I printed this money and I took some of this money to Babaji, and Babaji loved it. He spread it around to his devotees and he talked about it and tried to educate some of his devotees about what money was. And actually, without realizing it, I may have gotten Mr. Pilot,
Rajesh Bhai.
yeah, assassinated because he probably understood how the money system works and how the banker's money system works, and it may have been the bankers that ultimately were the cause of his assassination. So this game is going on. It's a real game. It's going on.
We are talking about Rajesh Pilot here. How many of you know Rajesh Pilot?
Good. So then the dividend concept. Corporations are starting to realize that 70% of the gross domestic product of all the transactions that happen in the country come from consumers. And if consumers don't have money, the economy goes into recession. And that's exactly what happened when the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States squashed the loans, real estate loans, because most of the money in the United States came from real estate loans. Real estate loans are the biggest business in most countries. And so when they squashed the real estate market, they created the recession. And so then consumers have to have money in order to make the economy work, and there has to be an intelligent and orderly way to distribute money so that people have money and the economy can work. And so corporations are starting to get into the act, and they are thinking of ways to create money that can be distributed to all the people in a specific locality so that money flows. Money has to flow back to the consumer so that they can re-spend it. When you spend money, you run out of money. It has to come back to you so they can spend it again. That's the way money works. It's called circulation. And economists have a sophisticated term for it. It's called the velocity. The health of the economy is determined by the velocity of spending. And so this is a very important concept. And when you absorb these concepts, it adds to your prosperity consciousness. It enables you to feel more comfortable and more powerful on the subject of money, and that automatically causes you to attract more money in your daily life. It enables you to feel more comfortable with money, and what you feel comfortable with works for you. And so corporations are starting to get the idea of creating a dividend fund, taking a certain percentage of profits, put it into the dividend fund and distributing it to people so that the consumer economy can start to work. But you can also do that with government. If you sold the city council of Mumbai on the idea of taking a certain percentage of their budget, if they just took 1% or 2% of their total annual cash and distributed it to all the citizens equally, it may only be a few dollars a month. But a few dollars a month for how many million people do you have? 10 million. So if you give all the 10 million people 1 rupees, that's 10 million rupees. And if you give them 100 rupees, it's a lot of money that is circulating in the economy. And so then it's important to have a logical money system that actually works, and you need to devote some thought to that, because energy becomes what it thinks about, right? And so if you keep thinking about it, you'll start to spread the idea into people's consciousness, and eventually it'll get implemented. And so larger and larger groups of people in the United States are starting to think about that idea, and it's just a question until it gets implemented. But if the city council took 2% of their budget and they distributed it equally to all the people in the city, it would come back to them multiplied. Because every time it's spent, it's taxed. And so if you increase the velocity of spending, then you increase the amount of tax income, and the 2% which they invested in the people, in their own people, would come back to them multiplied. And as a result, the next year, they could give twice as much money to the people. And the next year, twice as much money to the people. And if you think about that, it's only a matter of time until everybody in the city is financially independent. Until you have, from the dividend fund, enough cash flow that covers your basic expenses. When you have enough cash flow to cover your basic expenses, that's called financial independence. Okay, next subject.
Yeah. Can I do a small process for that? 5 minutes?
Oh,
I'll just, yeah. So let's do one small process. Just make groups of 4 wherever you're sitting. Just turn your chairs around and make groups of 4. Okay, we're going to do something very interesting. So, like a proper conference, okay? Look into each other's. थोड़ा ऐसा टेढ़ा मेढ़ा मत बैठो, तरीके से बैठो तुम लोग. Okay. Just make A, B, C, D amongst yourself. Generally, it is the D who makes, you know, to A, B, C, D. So, what we are going to do is, I want you to share, okay, with your partners, how long you wish to live. Okay? First question. Okay, that's it. You just have to share the age and you also have to tell why. तो ये why का जब आंसर देंगे तो पूरा राम कहानी मत सुना ना, खाली short में भी because of so and so, so and so. Whatever, be honest. Even if it is 50 years, tell 50. If it is 500, tell 500. Okay? How long you wish to live. So with the logic. Okay? So turn by turn, all of you have to complete your answers and D will start.
Till then, my because I know they have their own children. I love it.
You were sitting here?
Energetic.
I want to take all the years. Yes. The reason I want to leave is because I want to fulfill my life's purpose. So I want to leave.
100+ years.
तेरे कपड़े अच्छे हैं, ड्रेस सो गुड. You can stop. Be there. No, the beauty is going to come now. So, are you done? Yes, very good. Second question, within your group, more important question, okay? Yet more important question. How long do you expect to live? What you have shared till now is how long do you wish to live, right?
Yes.
Yes. So the second question is how long do you expect to live? So let's see. You have to be again very honest here. Suppose you have grown 150 years. And do you really expect to live for 50 years? You can just change your first answer, okay? If you want. So once again, now C will start. Yes, Shashikanji.
We have to explain the logic for
Yes. Even for this you have to explain the logic.
We have to. Let me see.
You can tell something like I expect to live only 70, 75 or so because I'm married, you know. You can give your own logic, whatever it is. And you can turn around. You can hug your partner also.
Thank you very much.
Share how long you wish to live and why. Yes, Ashu?
I said I want to live 100 years.
100 years.
And
Because 100 is a good number.
it's a simple thing, and I want to do a lot of things. in that in those 100 years.
Okay.
I want to follow the journey on spirituality. I want to work on wildlife. I want to do business. I want to make more friends.
Yes.
I want to do nothing.
You want to do nothing?
Meaning, at times, just be bored.
Okay.
That's
Just
also
be bored. Okay. Be sure. Very nice. So you think 100 is enough? Ooh. Let's see. Okay. Yes. Otherwise, it will be all in the family. Yes.
I'm outliving it.
That is precisely why he is going away so early. Yes.
Initially, I thought I'll live up to 75 because till that time I can live healthily and in a good state.
Yes.
But if many more years it is possible, then I want to live till the time I want to live.
So how much you wish to live in short? Forget possibility. There is nothing. Don't be realistic here, okay? Because there is nothing like realism. Whatever you wish to have, you can always have. That's the beauty of this world. Yes.
Then I can live for thousands of years.
Not can live. How much you wish to live?
Thousands of years.
One number. Only one number.
Limited number then.
Okay. Yes. Yes, Meera.
500.
500. Very good. So you might have the privilege of having at least 5 ashus in your life, one after. Okay.
And his wife said 100, so we did it.
So for 400 years I have one more.
He's saying I've got incentive now.
Okay, very nice. Yes, some other answer?
I would like to share a poem.
Poem, how long it is?
I will tell you it's very short.
100 years.
It is not growing like a tree in bulk, doth make man better be. Or standing long and oak 300 years, to fall a log at last dry, bald and sere.
Yes.
A lily of a day
Yes.
is fairer far in May,
Yes.
although it fall and die that night.
Yes.
It was a plant and flower of life.
Yes.
In small proportions, we just beauty see, and in short measure, life may perfect be.
Wow. Give a big hand. Very nice. So what he is discussing is, there are two ways in which time is, you can measure time or time operates. One is the horizontal time and one is the vertical time. Okay, the vertical time is the intensity with which you can live every moment. Okay, and unless you can live every moment intensely and beautifully, then this 100, 200, 500 is also of no point. Correct or not?
Yes.
You know, it is something like if your life is boring, why do you want to be immortal? Yes or no? So first, as he is correctly telling, the time going deeper, okay? The vertical time has to be beautiful, okay? And when your vertical time is wonderful, you go from time to timelessness, okay? If you can live in timelessness every moment, then it makes a lot of sense to have 100, 200, 500, 5,000 years. Yes or no?
Yes.
No, that is his entire point. I fully agree with you that it is in the moment, you know. But what we are discussing here is, if your entire moment can be wonderful, then as an extrapolation, it makes a lot of sense to have a very long, maybe everlasting life full of such extraordinary moments. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Some other answer? Even humor will do, okay? No problem. Everybody was 100 plus?
No, live forever.
Forever? Okay. Was it yes? Thousands of years.
I've learned about it, I believe.
I know. This is the problem when we announce the topic in advance, you know. Everybody will play very smart, okay, and give an answer which the trainer is going to be very happy about. I know. And if you are going to give away 100 or 1,000 or whatever years right away, then what will myself and what will Leonard speak? You already know the answer in that case. So the idea behind this sharing was just to set you thinking. How many of you felt that there was a gap between what you wished to live and what you expect to live? Right? Gap, huge gap. quite often, okay? Unless your life is damn boring and you're miserable and you tell, nahi yaar, 70-75 जीना है खाली बस, उससे ज़्यादा नहीं जीना है. And when we ask you how much you expect, you'll say, हाँ भाई 70-75, okay? So then there's no gap. Ignorance is bliss. You're a happy person. No? But if life is wonderful, then there's going to be a huge gap. Yes or no? You know, the gap is because life is wonderful. We really, really want to live very, very long, but at the same time, we don't have the technology. No, somewhere we don't have the technology. जरिए नहीं है, हमारे पास औजार ही नहीं है कि कैसे इतनी लंबी जिंदगी को जिए. Yes or no?
Yes.
You know, so that is the whole idea. So now, this was just to set yourself thinking about. This is a very, this is a good way to understand that how long you wish to live and how long you expect to live, and there is such a huge gap simply because of, you know what? Why is the gap? If you have to tell me in one word, because of ignorance. Okay, one thing. Childhood conditioning. Is it only conditioning? What else?
Fear of the disease and Buddha.
Fear of disease itself. So belief system in a way. Yes.
Lack of tools.
Lack of tools. What else?
We don't see people like that.
Because we have not seen live examples of people who have been. Leonard could give many such examples of people who have been living for thousands of years now. Okay. Yes, I can see some eyes popping out.
Where are they?
We'll share. You could ask him. We'll have some time. So what else?
Lack of vision.
Huh?
Lack of vision.
No, just be very practical and tell. No, ये सब ना spiritual answers है. People who have attended all these kind of self-help programs. So belief system, vision, possibility. Simple answer.
I don't think it's possible.
Not just think it's possible. Why there is such a big gap?
We don't know how.
So what? So what is it that where are we going wrong in terms of you're very close?
Our health.
Or in other words, the huge gap is because of our lifestyle. Yes or no? It's because of our lifestyle, no? We somewhere don't know what is the correct. We somewhere know to some extent, okay? But does any of you over here know the correct ideal lifestyle to be able to live for, say, at least, at least say, just like Ram and Sita, at least 12,000 years? हाँ, पता है?
No.
120 का पता है? No? 160 तक का. कायाकल्प क्रिया can take us up to 160, Guruji used to say. Okay, Swami Bua, you know Swami Bua from New York City? We cremated him in Marawadi Ashram at 120, just 2 years back. He used to live on the east side of Manhattan, in the middle of that throbbing New York, and he lived for 120 years. Okay, so even in the middle of Mumbai, you can very easily live for 120. Okay, अगर मुंबई में 120 तो कातरखड़क very easily 1200. Okay, so it is about the lifestyle, yes or no? It surely is about the belief system, about believing in death itself, and about the vision, not knowing the possibility, not seeing the ideal examples. But it is primarily about the lifestyle. Okay, and somewhere it is also about who shared ignorance from here. Yes, ignorance of the correct lifestyle, or you can also say lifestyle of the immortals. Okay. So I would like naturally Leonard to throw more light upon it, because and you might really wonder, somebody who can talk so deep about money. You know, I could see that some people were extremely like this and the others were bumper. Okay, so somebody who can talk so deeply about money can at the same time the same person talk as deeply or maybe more passionately or more in much greater intensity even about immortality. He was spiritually enlightened in 1960, and 69 or something, Leonard unraveled his death urge. Okay, so I have seen him riding horses in Virginia, and I have seen him doing the karma yoga of building a house. And I just had a word with Rajendra ji that he is, at 78 he rides horses and he builds houses and he does a lot of things. He came up trekking with us, and he could do it very, very, very easily. So he unraveled his death urge itself in the end of in 1970s sometime. So even though I may speak 100 things, but he is perhaps one of the most eligible people in the world to talk about physical immortality. So.
Okay, well, to think about physical immortality, we have to think about the philosophy of it. I started thinking about it when I was a teenager. And I came across a book in 1961 called How to Live Forever. And I was fascinated by the book. It was the first book that I found on the subject. And it was many years later that I found out from the author's wife that the author died on the way to give a lecture on physical immortality. And I collected all of the books in the English language on the subject of physical immortality. And I noticed that all the authors died before 100. So I realized that you had to do more than write a book about the idea and to believe in the idea. And so I decided, some of the books that I read talked about immortal yogis, and my question is, are they still alive? And so I decided that if they were still alive, I would find one and find out how they did it. And so 1977, in April, I came to India the first time, which was 3 years after rebirthing had perfected itself and started spreading. And I was actually invited to India, to Bombay, in April 1977, to share rebirthing with some people here in Bombay. And so I shared it with several hundred people. I actually brought 10 rebirthers with me, and we came to share the idea of rebirthing here in Bombay. And so we were invited to go into Baroda and different places. I'll tell you a story about this. On our journey in April 1967, we were invited to give a lecture at a girls' dormitory, a Catholic girls' dormitory, actually. We started the lecture. There was 400 girls, and one of the reasons we were invited is because a few of the girls came to our hotel and they did rebirthing sessions, and so they talked about it. All these girls wanted to have a session, and so there was 10 of us, and after talking about it for 30 minutes, all of the 1,400 girls wanted to have a session. And so then I thought, this is not going to work. And so I spent another half an hour trying to frighten them and talk them out of it as efficiently as I could. And there was 30 of them that stayed in the room. And the other girls, the hall, it was an auditorium much bigger than this, and there was a balcony that went around the side of this auditorium, and all the girls that weren't chosen to be the 30 people were on this balcony watching the girls down here going through technique and all kinds of things. And so the 10 of us were running around with these 30 girls trying to get them through completed energy cycles. Well, when they were all paralyzed, the Mother Superior sent word that all the guests had to leave. And so he said, well, please give us a few more minutes. So every half an hour we kept asking for a few more minutes until finally we got these girls through a completed energy cycle, and then we left. That's the way it worked in 1977. And so halfway through the trip, I didn't any immortals. I thought the immortals would know that I was coming and that they would somehow let me know that they were there and that I would go meet them. So I didn't find any immortals, so I started asking around at various temples. And have any of you ever heard of Abu Babaji? Okay, well, Abu Babaji was the most powerful guru around at the time. And so this one priest said, you have to meet Abu Babaji. So he went to meet Abu Babaji. He was totally fascinated by me and my rebirthing group, and he adopted us instantly. And so he didn't believe in physical immortality. He was in his 70s. He was actually born into the second richest family in India, but he renounced his family when he was 19 and left the house one evening in his pajamas, and he wandered around India for 30 years. And he developed a lot of interesting powers and mastered mantras, and he had the ability to heal 5,000 people in one day. And at the end of that day, doctors would examine his body, and they said, you have the sickest body that we've ever seen in our career. You couldn't possibly live for 24 hours. And so he would say, well, come back and bury me in 24 hours. And so they came back in 24 hours, they re-examined his body, said, you have the healthiest body we've ever seen in our career. So he was able to do that with mantra power. He also had the gift of feeding the thousands of people twice